anti-clockwise at junction 14 at Heathrow. Traffic's being held and there are delays from junction 16 at the M40. Also, problems continue on the M4 going eastbound. It's slow to the M25 junction because emergency repair works are taking place.
This is LBC.
Could you look an intense
Ferrari now. 0345 6060 973. LBC.
you can sell
Ferrari at breakfast on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
Much to discuss on the news agenda, so let's get straight to Conservative MP and Cabinet Office Minister Michael Gove, who joins me now. Thank you for coming on the programme, Mr Gove. Why is it necessary for the Prime Minister to go to Scotland today? Good morning.
Hi, good morning, Nick. I think it's necessary for the Prime Minister to visit those on the front line across the United Kingdom responsible for vaccine delivery, to thank them for their work and to develop a granular understanding of what's going well and what needs to improve.
When was he last in Belfast?
I don't recall when the Prime Minister was last in Belfast.
I'll tell you.
But I know that
I'll tell you, that's my job. August. So why would it possibly, this trip, be something to do with the fact that there's a growing sense of Scottish independence, Mr Gove?
Well, when the Prime Minister was visiting the fill and finish factory in Wrexham, which is also a critical part of the vaccine delivery programme.
That was in November.
Yes,
Yeah.
He was doing so as part of the effort that the Prime Minister and all ministers make to make sure that they're fully informed about the fight against this virus. And again, when the Prime Minister visits Oxford or visits Manchester, he's doing so in order to ensure that we learn from those on the front line. Politicians are sometimes entirely legitimately criticised for being detached in, living in ivory towers in Whitehall. Sometimes it's appropriate for all of us to roll up our sleeves, get there on the front line, and talk to the professionals so that we can learn from them what we can do better.
So it's not fuelled in any way by this growing sense that perhaps there is a resurgence in the idea of Scottish independence, Mr. Gove?
No, all we're working on, all we're focusing on, is making sure that the vaccine rollout can be as effective as possible across the United Kingdom. There are 80 new vaccination centres that the British Army are opening in Scotland to make sure that the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine gets into people's arms. That is our overwhelming focus.
And what will he be doing when he gets to Scotland, and will he have his afternoon nap on the train on the way up?
Well, the Prime Minister will be talking to the professionals, both from our NHS and also from the British Army, who are involved in the vaccine rollout. And as I say, he'll be asking them what more we can do in order to ensure that the programme is as effective as possible. And I think, I'm not sure I can share all the Prime Minister's travel arrangements with you, but I think he'll probably be flying. But the Prime Minister is, like all of us, focused 24/7 on defeating this virus.
Well, not when he's having an afternoon sleep, of course. Do you have a power nap, Mr. Gove?
No, but I try to make sure that I'm up bright and early to listen to LBC, and then try to make sure
I'm grateful.
that
I'm grateful. Why does the Prime Minister need a power nap?
I have no what's the word? I've no awareness that he does.
The stories are untrue. He doesn't have a sleep.
I have no knowledge. I don't believe that those stories are true. Everything that I've seen of the Prime Minister is that he works through the day incredibly hard. So I don't know where this story has come from, but all I see of the Prime Minister is someone who's focused 24/7 on doing everything he can to make sure that our fight against the virus is effectively coordinated.
Well, let's all more power to you and all your colleagues. And as part of that, we may have these quarantine hotels. Under what circumstances can a British citizen leave the country, from your understanding, Mr. Gove?
It should only be the case that UK citizens should go abroad in absolutely essential circumstances. They should not be going abroad for holidays or for social influencing jaunts.
OK, so what would that mean? Someone has an elderly relative who's unwell elsewhere in the world. Are you allowed to go to India or Australia or wherever it might be to visit them?
You should be staying at home. Of course, there will be specific reasons, compassionate reasons and business reasons, but overwhelmingly it should be the case that people should be staying at home.
Hang on a second. So were he still alive? My dad is ill in Switzerland. I can't go and see him.
You should be staying at home.
I can't go and visit my sick dad?
It all depends on the individual circumstance. Again, it would all depend on the specific case and the specific need for that journey or for that visit. It would be the case that we would make sure that before you went, the appropriate steps were taken to satisfy the criteria of an essential visit. OK,
so somebody can't possibly go and see their elderly relative in India or Switzerland, but the Prime Minister can go to Scotland to talk to and ask people questions. He could have done via Zoom. Mr. Gove?
Scotland is not a foreign country. It's part of the United Kingdom.
No, but travel is restricted only for business. Why doesn't he do this via Zoom?
It is a business trip because the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom has, as an essential core part of his business and his work, making sure that the vaccine programme is as effective as possible and making sure that we learn from those who are responsible for delivery. When the Prime Minister, as we discussed earlier, is visiting Wrexham or Oxford, nobody suggests that those visits are somehow reckless or illegitimate. Quite the opposite. People welcome the opportunity to speak frankly to the PM about what more we can do in order to improve our response.
When will quarantine hotels become a reality, do you imagine, Mr. Gove?
Well, the Cabinet Committee responsible for the implementation of this policy will be meeting later today, and we will be talking to the travel sector about making sure that we can introduce this regime as quickly as possible. And there'll be more updates later today and tomorrow about the implementation of the policy.
It's being suggested it could be 3 weeks off. Do you recognise that amount of time?
We're going to do it as quickly as we can.
So it could be 3 weeks?
As I say, there'll be more updates later today and tomorrow about implementation.
I mean, if we needed it, surely it could be done within a matter of days, Mr. Gove.
Well, that's why we're going to try to make sure that we do it as quickly as possible.
But what are the blocks? What are the obstacles that have to be cleared?
Well, the Cabinet Committee reviewing that will be looking at all of those individual issues. Sorry, my cat's just come
I
on.
noticed that. Now, what is the cat's name?
The cat is called Cersei. The cat is actually behind the laptop and is about to put it, knock it over.
Oh,
So,
right, okay. Don't worry.
Cersei.
Okay. I'm now seeing your midriff, Mr. Gove. It's
Sorry,
not something
no,
I
no.
thought I'd ever wake up to, your midriff, right,
Sorry,
full screen.
This is Cersei, the cat, and she's now...
What has happened to the cat now, Mr. Gove?
Sorry. The cat is on the mat.
The cat is on the mat. Well, as long as it's just sat on the mat and not doing anything else on the mat, we'll continue. Just the obstacles to putting in these quarantine hotels. What would the obstacles be, Mr. Gove?
Well, the Cabinet Committee that's reviewing this policy will be looking at it today to make sure that we can have the right hotels in the right locations with the right regime. It is something, as you know, that's been operating in Australia, New Zealand and other jurisdictions. So we just want to make sure that we can have the right approach with those hotels, and also the right approach when it comes to making sure that individuals who come into airports and so on can be moved safely from those airports straight into these designated settings.
Let me ask you this. The vaccine rollout has been a singular success story for Britain, for the scientists, for the NHS, for the military and for everybody else. Has it only been achieved, or in part been achieved, because Britain Brexited, Mr. Gove?
No, I think the most important thing is it's been achieved because Kate Bingham, the incredibly public-spirited person who was responsible for the vaccines task force, made a decision early on about procurement, which was backed by Alok Sharma, the business secretary, because Matt Hancock and his team made sure that we were in a position to be able to roll out a vaccine if one was developed in time. And it's really been made available as a result of our scientists and our doctors working so hard. They're the real heroes and heroines of this.
Indeed. And as we see our European friends possibly in need, should we make some UK-made vaccines available to our friends across the Channel?
Well, I think we need to make sure that the vaccine supply that has been bought and paid for, procured for those in the UK, is delivered. But of course, we're always going to work with our friends and neighbours to make sure that we can do everything we can to help them. But our priority has to be making sure that the people in our country who are vulnerable and who we have targeted for vaccination receive those jabs in those arms.
And do we mean first and second before we help our friends across the Channel, or just first and then we help our friends across the Channel?
Well, again, I think European countries have their own commercial relationships with vaccine suppliers, and that's good. We must concentrate on our programme using the supplies.
Yes, I hear that. First and second, though, that's the point. You want every Brit to have both doses before we look to help our friends across the water.
I want to make sure that the vaccine programme in the UK proceeds exactly as planned, and that is what we're all entirely focused on in government.
And when a German MEP says the UK needs to think twice, otherwise it will suffer in this vaccine row, how do you respond?
Well, politics is politics. I'm sure all sorts of people, MPs and MEPs, will say all sorts of things. But I'm a huge fan of Germany. It's one of my favourite countries.
Oh, really? Why?
I love visiting. I love the German people. I love the scenery, the food.
You love German food?
Yes.
What's to love about German food, Mr. Gove?
Well,
it's sausages.
When the pandemic is over, Nick, you and I can travel to Germany together.
I look forward to that.
I'll take you out to lunch in one of my favourite haunts in Bavaria, And I think you'll see...
All right, I look forward to that. Last couple of questions. Keir Starmer is suggesting that teachers should be elevated in the sectors or the waves of those getting vaccinations, possibly even ahead of those who are vulnerable. Sir Keir is here on LBC taking calls later in the hour. Do you have an observation of that I could play to him, Mr. Gove?
Well, again, Sir Keir and other Labour figures are doing their best to encourage people to get vaccinated. That's great. I'm grateful to him for that. And of course, when it comes to reviewing who should be vaccinated once we've got cohorts, the most eligible cohorts vaccinated, that's something that naturally we will want the expertise of our scientists who sit on the Joint Committee on Vaccination and Immunisation to inform us on.
Last couple of questions. You're a former Education Secretary. How confident are you the schools will return on March the 8th?
That, I think, is the earliest possible date on which we can see schools return. We're doing everything possible in order to ensure that we meet that date, and I am confident that we will.
Well, you and I are both journalists by training. When you said the earliest, then I can clearly read into that it might not be March the 8th.
Well, none of us can predict the future with absolute accuracy, but we're planning on that basis, and that is what we want to achieve. And I think that given the progress that we're making so far in vaccination, that should be achievable. But as the Prime Minister reminded us yesterday, we want to be absolutely certain that our progress can continue. And
your colleague, Gavin Williamson, was pushing for an earlier return. He lost that discussion in Cabinet, did he, Mr. Gove?
Well, we all want the earliest possible return of schools. That's what we've all been working on collectively. And we've all been looking to see how we can get children back in the classroom. We all know that is the best place for them. But of course, we also know that we can't do that until we've made sure that we've managed to reduce the rate of infection overall and get people vaccinated.
Lastly, the great success, we've talked about the vaccines. Of course, sadly, that comes in the face of the horrific milestone that was reached earlier this week of more than 100,000 deaths. And we also have to accept that per head of population, the United Kingdom has fared worse than the entire world. Can you honestly put your hand on your heart and say you believe everything was done as speedily as it could have been done by you and your colleagues?
Well, I know that all of us have been every day doing everything we can. But of course, the time will come in due course for us all to look back, to review, to reflect and to learn. I don't think any of us can say that the response of any country has been perfect. There will be lessons to be learned, and I'm sure that there will be apologies to be offered as well. But at the moment, what I'm concentrating on is making sure that our response is as effective and as honed and as fast as possible.
OK. And your cat, it's named after Game of Thrones, presumably, is it? Is that right?
No, it's named after Circe, the enchantress from Greek mythology.
Well, who came by that name, Mr. Gove?
It's a family choice.
I'm grateful for your time. Michael Gove appearing here on LBC, where at 5 minutes after 8, news is next.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 8 o'clock, the Prime Minister will visit Scotland later to highlight the importance of the Union during the coronavirus pandemic. But the trip comes as calls grow for a second independence referendum, and First Minister Nicola Sturgeon has argued Boris Johnson's journey north of the border is not essential during lockdown. Michael Blackley is political editor at the Scottish Daily Mail.
She was very keen to point